I think very few people actually pay attention before they speak to what they're going to say. And I've certainly seen this in myself enough times where words seem to just come tumbling out in the enthusiasm, one way or another, of the moment.
Also, the intention behind what they're saying.
Well, exactly.
Why are they saying that thing? Yeah.
Exactly. Very often there is a motivation to divide or to cause harm in some way or to speak what is untrue. Or one of my favorites, which it amuses me to see it, is what in the Buddhist tradition is called useless talk, where it serves no purpose. And the word in Pali, which is the ancient language of India that a lot of the texts are written in, the Pali word for useless talk, it's really onomatopoeia, because the Pali word is sampapalapa.
Hmm.
So it sounds just like what it is.
Right.
And very often I'll be in a conversation, with friends or a group of people, and just see the urge to say something that is completely useless. And it's just a way of declaring, here I am. That's its only purpose. And when I see that, when I can catch that impulse,
Mm.
see that this is some pop up, this is useless, and refrain, it actually feels good. It feels like a conservation of energy. It's not just spilling out, verbal energy. And it makes our words more valuable. People have more respect for what we say if what we
Mm.
say is useful in some way. So that's just one
Mm.
example.
I think there might be ways in which the Buddhist conception of right speech may not totally map onto what we understand about human speech now. So, for instance, like gossip
Hmm.
is a classic example of wrong speech in a Buddhist sense. And you can see how divisive gossip often is. You can see how you tend to feel when you are around people who are gossiping,
Hmm.
especially if it's malicious gossip. The impulse in oneself to dish about somebody who's not present can certainly seem, under scrutiny, seem like, not the noblest of things. But gossip also does serve a function, and in many cases, it serves a good social function. Gossiping about others serves a function, and living in a context where you might be gossiped about, so you have a reputation that you are concerned to manage,
Hmm.
that also serves a function. It actually builds in a kind of moral shame, and it puts a few brakes on the system, and people who are totally shameless, well, some of them get elected president of the United States, but in the usual case, it doesn't work out quite that well. So what do you think about gossip? Do you just think it's intrinsically bad across the board,
No,
or
I think what you're pointing to is that we use that term to cover quite a wide range of speech. And I would say kind of the dividing line or a dividing line between what one might call useful gossip
Mhm.
and harmful gossip. One dividing line, which is very interesting to observe, is what our motivation is. Is our motivation really to harm someone, or to cause divisiveness? Or is it in some way the sharing of information that seems useful to
Mhm.
share? Because if the motivation is to harm, in the repetition of that kind of speech, we are creating within ourselves a toxic mental environment. We're creating in our own mind stream impulses and actions filled with some degree of aversion, of hatred, of fear, whatever
Mhm.
whatever the unwholesome motivation is. So we're just strengthening these forces in the mind that cause us suffering, and are creating an inner world for ourselves that's not a peaceful one, as well as, causing harm to others. So I would say really looking at the motivation behind whatever
Mhm.
it is that we're calling gossip is a key element.
But what about the case where the motivation certainly isn't obviously noble, but nor is it obviously malicious? It seems to me that most gossip arises on the basis of people wanting to have amusing, entertaining conversations. So, like, I have a great, oh, you won't believe what happened to X. It's not that I have a malicious attitude toward X. It's not that I necessarily want to harm X's reputation with you,
Mhm.
but this is just something
Yeah.
amusing that has come to mind. And the crucial variable for me, I guess, now I'm kind of looking for the algorithm that covers all of these cases. The measure of the toxicity of any of these moments is, I think, largely in the distance between how I'm talking about X now to you and how I would be willing to talk about X
Mhm.
knowing that X was going to overhear it or if X were in the room, right? If there's a drastic difference there,
Yes.
that suggests something unskillful, to
Yes.
put it in Buddhist terms, about my attitude and motives and all the rest.
No, I think that's a good simple frame
Right.
in which to assess. I think there is a more subtle level which would not fall within that framework, and that is something that I've noticed in myself, and I see it in others as well. Even in what seems like benign, gossip,
Hmm.
kind of the example you say, an interesting aspect to pay attention to is whether in some way, whether speaking in that way is coming from or reinforces a sense of self. And I think in very subtle ways, even when it's not malicious and we're not intending to harm, very often there's just
A
uh,
self-aggrandizing motive or
something or self-satisfaction or
schadenfreude or
something.
mm,
And so that would just be worth investigating,
mm.
to see whether that's there or not, you know.
Let's talk about that because this notion that something about the success of meditation translates into an erosion of self, right?
A sense of self, yeah.
That is surprising
Hmm.
to most people.